Hey watch friends, today we're going to take a look at this pair of watches from Revelot. This is their latest model, the Hexmariner. In case you missed it, we actually recently featured an unboxing video. I do encourage you to check that one out. That actually will go into some details, not only in the packaging, but I cover some highlights that are going to be changes. These two we're looking at here are going to be prototypes, so do keep that in mind as we go through the review. I'll try to highlight some of the updates that I know about that are going to be happening, but additionally, if you see any scratches, scuffs, finishing imperfections, things along those lines, that can be attributed to it being a prototype. These two will be coming to Kickstarter here, as well as a whole host of other options that are going to be offered on October 19th of 2021. So I'll have a link to that in the description, as well as other links in there, Amazon affiliate links, things like that if you want to help out the channel. So without further ado, let's go ahead and actually dive into these. We're going to be looking at a pair today. As you can see, it's going to be two different case materials, stainless steel and then bronze. And we'll talk about some of the differences, but for the most part, it's going to be similar between these. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and actually set the bronze aside, and we'll start with this stainless steel one. First, getting the basic specs out of the way. The basic specs on this one, its case size is going to be coming in at 42 millimeters, and that's roughly from about the 2 o'clock to the 8 o'clock position. The bezel does actually sit slightly proud, as you can see there, overhangs just a little bit, and this is going to be coming in at roughly 42.5 millimeters. The lugs are going to be a strap change friendly 22 millimeters, and then we'll talk about the bracelet taper as well as for the strap on there, so you will have nice options. As far as the lug to lug, this is going to be surprising. For a 42, it's not too bad at all. It's coming in at 47.8 millimeters with the lug to lug. On the stainless steel version, where it does have, as you can see, male end links, and we'll talk about some changes there, this is only bumping it up to about 52 millimeters. While that may seem large, as we'll see later on in the outdoor footage and otherwise, on my 6.5 inch wrist, it still has plenty of room to spare, so don't let that scare you off if you have a smaller wrist. For thickness, this is coming in for a diver and for having an NH35 movement, which we'll talk about here in a second. This is only coming in at 13.2 millimeters, slightly above where they spec it in at, but that is including this flat sapphire crystal. And really, overall, for an NH35 and for having 200 meters of water resistance, not too bad. As we just mentioned there, this does have a flat sapphire crystal sitting on top, and that does have inner AR coating for that also. The movement, as mentioned, is an NH35. If you're not familiar with that, it's a workhorse movement, has all the features you would want other than being high beat, has a decent power reserve, is going to have hacking, hand winding, all those kind of things for it as well. And we already talked about the water resistance, which you can also see sitting down at the 6 o'clock position. It's going to be 200 meters or 20 atmospheres of water resistance. As far as the weight, this one's going to be coming in with the stainless steel, and this is sized for this bracelet for my 6.5 inch wrist. This is going to be coming in at roughly 159 grams. Conversely, the bronze, which is a little heavier as far as the actual head itself, but because this is coming on an FKM rubber strap, a silicone rubber strap rather, and this will be a dust-resistant silicone. It does remind me of an FKM, however it is a little more pliable, and we'll look at that more too. This one's going to be coming in at 113.8 grams, so 159 and 113.8, and again, a lot of that's going to be attributable to the difference between strap versus coming on the bracelet there. So now getting into some of the more of the specifics. I already mentioned that this one's going to come with a slew of different color options. You're actually going to have, as you saw here, the two different dial variants. So you're going to have the 3D dial texture, which is featured today on the black one, and that's going to be available with 3 different colors for the dial itself. You have black, blue, and green options available. Additionally, you'll be able to find a mix of configurations, and you can pair that with either the bronze or the stainless steel case, as well as gilt accents and various other touches as well. Additionally, there's going to be 2 dial options for the Meteorite. So that will be either a natural, which is a lighter gray, or a gunmetal that you're going to have available as well. So with that, you do have plenty of choices available, and each of those have multiple configurations of those. Those are just the dials. So 2 hugely different dial textures to begin with, and then a whole host of colors and different configuration options. One of the most robust that I've ever seen as far as a portfolio, especially for a Kickstarter campaign. So quite aggressive and ambitious there. One of the things when you will look at the characteristics of this that you're going to see throughout, both of these dials are going to be very playful. They have significant light shift as you go across conditions. You'll notice that whether it's the 3D texture or the Meteorite, they really like to play around with the light. Additionally, I found both of them can be relatively subtle. Depending on how you're holding them, depending on the angle, depending on the way the light's hitting it, it can either be very subdued, or alternatively, it can have a lot of pop as well. So it really, I think, lends itself to the different conditions that you're in, where you'd otherwise be wearing a diver. On the dial configuration for this, you're going to notice beyond the dials themselves that this does have printed text throughout. You're going to have at the 12 o'clock position, you will have their logo as well as the Revelot text that's listed there. And then down at the 6 o'clock, you do have 3 lines of text. You're going to have the name, automatic, and then the water resistance that are featured as well. Right below that, you are going to have a date window at the 6 o'clock position, which is, of course, equipped with the NH35, so that is able to power that. Of course, no ghost position here because this does have a date. As far as on the outer perimeter, this one you will notice does have a rehaut in there, and this particular one does have an etching on there. So you can see around the perimeter, you'll notice that it does have your minute as the 5-minute positions, and it does also mention Launch Edition. The Launch Edition is important to note. There are going to be some nuances to this particular version, and all of the ones on Kickstarter will be Launch Edition, but if you're watching this after the Kickstarter campaign, some of these features, such as the etching on the rehaut, will not be featured on the standard production, as I understand it. Around the perimeter of the dial, you will notice that there is printed with your minute and second indicators there, so it does have individual ticks, so you can get precision legibility. Shifting over to the hardware. The hardware on this is going to be coming with 2 different options. You do have gilt version as well as stainless steel version, depending on the particular configuration that you choose. Each of those, though, are going to be featuring what I would describe as either a sword or potentially a paddle style hand, but you will notice out at the tips, it does have that consistent hex theme for that. They also are going to have fairly playful for the texture. The hands themselves are going to have a brush strip down the middle, which do note on the production version that will be a slightly finer brushing than it is now. It's a little more coarse on this version. And then on the outer sides, you will notice that there's faceting for that, and the facets do really play with the light, and they are highly polished. So nice little accents of pop. Shifting over to the second hand, you will see a double hex accent on the second hand. You have the lollipop style with the red tip, but then you also have the counterbalance down at the bottom of the hand. Both of those give the nod to the hex tip there as well. Sticking with the hex theme, you will notice the markers are all hex shaped, which is a nice touch and I think is overall cohesive with the overarching design. You'll notice that at the 12, 3, and 9 position, you do have larger hexes that are featured there. So it's nice to see them mix things up while staying pretty true and consistent across the theming. Additionally, you'll notice on each of both the markers as well as the handset, you do have that faceting throughout. So there's really a lot of light play, a lot of polished accents that are featured through there, and I think it's a good touch. Additionally, for the loom on this, these are going to have either C3 or BGW9 loom, depending on which version you go with. The loom is absolutely insane on these. They definitely really pumped it up with the loom. You will have on the production version, they are going to actually bump up the hands even further for a little more consistency, especially during the day for those. But the overall, the performance, the endurance of this, I think it stacks up pretty well against just about anything that I have in my collection or that I've seen recently. So great job there for overall loom. Shifting over to the bezel. The bezel action on this is going to be a dive style bezel. And let's go ahead and listen to that. Get a nice click. The action's not too bad. In the unboxing, I tested out the stainless steel, and I said it was decent, and I find the same thing here. It's not the best in the world, but it will be tightened up on the production version, which I look forward to. It has a tactile click to it. It is a 120 click unidirectional, as you would expect for being a dive style watch. The action, I think, could be stiffened a little bit, but it doesn't have appreciable play. The lineup is pretty solid on it as well. Maybe a tick off on both of these towards the 1 o'clock side, but really not too bad. And I think overall, it's decently done, especially for being prototypes and knowing that they are going to work on those. As far as the bezel inserts, each of these do feature polished bezel inserts, and that is going to vary depending on the model as far as the color. You can see that on the Meteorite version here in the bronze, we do have a green coloration, and then on the black version, you have a matching black bezel insert as well. The polishing is really nicely done, and again, that is ceramic, so you're going to have great wear resistance and everything there, which is really cool. As far as the actual bezel itself, you can see the outer perimeter, again, it stayed, especially with that 3D dial, really stayed consistent with the theming for that. And I like this bezel. It's different than most others that I've seen, but I do think it's nice looking, and it does have polishing that continues there. They were going for what they describe as a dress diver. I do think this is a little large for a dress diver. It's not as sleek as I would typically expect there, but I get what they were going for. Overall, with the polish accents, the different faceting, the light play, it does give a little bit of a dressier feel to it. So I think that's pretty well accomplished. Shifting over, actually, before we leave the bezel, I did want to mention at the 12 o'clock position in all variants, you will see a traditional triangle pip, and then you'll see a shield around that with an accent color, which I think looks really nice. Shifting over to the case, you will notice that predominantly this is going to be a brushed case, and as you can see, it is a linear brushing texture, and it's pretty nicely applied. Additionally, this does have polished accents, and you can see this does have very angular, and again, facets all over the place for more light play and reflectivity, which I think is nice. Then down at the bottom of the case, you'll notice that this does have a step down as well. So that really helps to slim out this mid case, making it seem even skinnier than it is. I actually was surprised when this even came in at 13 millimeters for thickness. It felt a little bit skinnier than that to me, which I was surprised with because in pictures, I thought it was going to feel bulbous. So that was very nice. The lugs on this do slightly downturn. You can see they're not quite in alignment with the case back, but they're pretty close, which that works well for me. And as you saw in the wrist footage, I think it fits pretty well overall on the wrist, nests pretty nicely. As we already talked about, it does continue that angular theme. You have somewhat of a slab side, though really, I think with the facets, I wouldn't call it a slab. But it does have the angular cuts that go, especially as you get into the lugs. Shifting over to the flip side here, you can see this does have integrated crown guards, and again, it continues with the polishing and faceting through there also. Looking at the crown itself, this is coming in at 6.8 millimeters, and as you would expect for a dive watch, this is a screw-down crown. I found the grip to be easy and the threadings to be pretty clean, especially for a prototype. This does have a signed crown, though it does not have any lume accent, as you can see there. Shifting over to the case back, the case back is pretty neat on this one. One of the things I wasn't real sure about, they said they were going to do an exhibition case back, which for me, with an NH35 movement, that's a workhorse movement. Nothing wrong with it. I'm actually a fan of the NH35. I think it's a good, reliable movement, and I like the way that it generally performs. That being said, it's not the prettiest movement in the world. So when they talked about doing an exhibition case back, I wasn't sure how that was going to look. But as you can see here, what they did was pretty neat. They put this pattern in the back, which continuing again with the hex theme, and it adds some gilt to that, which I think looks attractive. But additionally, what it does is it gives you a partially obscured exhibition. So hopefully we can get this to move. It's hard at these angles to get it to go, especially with all the reflectivity. But that being said, you can see the crown, or the rotor rather, moving around through the case back. So I think that's a pretty cool touch and a nice way to incorporate that, especially with an NH35 movement. The actual case back itself is going to have a brush texture, and it does have clean text going all the way around, nicely etched in, and as you can see for these particular ones, it's going to have that launch edition mentioned there also. Shifting over to the bracelet and strap. The bracelet on this we've already talked about a fair amount, but the bracelet here, this is going to be tapered, so it starts at 22 millimeters, and it does taper down to roughly 20 millimeters. Do note on the production version, this will be a true end link here to meet up with the clasp, so you won't have that gap and you won't have that unsightly appearance, and it won't stick up like it does on this. So I wouldn't be scared off by that piece. They've already featured some pictures of what that will look like here. This was just a prototype to get that together to be able to send these out without having delays for the campaign. The end link additionally will be changing here. You can see on this one, it does protrude slightly, so it's a little bit of a rounded, which I don't really think is in keeping with the overall hex theme in the facets for this, so they will actually be squaring that off a bit, so it's going to have a similar profile and contour, but that will actually be flattened, which I think will be a much better integration, so I appreciate that change that they're doing. As you go down the bracelet, consistent with the rest of it, you can see that it does have a lot of cuts, a lot of facets. It is going to be predominantly brushed across all of the bracelet. However, on the launch edition, it does have polishing on the outer chamfered edge. The production version will not have that polish, so that's another reason that it's nice to back this on the Kickstarter campaign. As far as the bracelet articulation, this I found to be pretty good. It has decent sized links, but it still actually articulates smoothly, and it articulates pretty well, so I found the drape to be pretty decent on this. As far as retaining this one, it is going to be a pin and collar system. So you can see on the back here, you've got those arrows. Do note, be very cautious whenever you're sizing these. I found the sizing to be relatively easy, but it does have loose collars in the middle there, so make sure those stay in your middle links and you don't fall and have that lose that somewhere. On the back of this will have a quick release bracelet, so that makes for nice easy changes. All you have to do is pinch a hold of that, and you can pop that off and put this on a strap of your choice. Outside of that, the clasp itself, you can see it's a very small clasp. I wouldn't have minded if they kicked that out a little bit further, but it does include 3 micro adjustment holes, and it is just a standard double pusher type configuration. And additionally, this is signed. Shifting over to the bracelet on the FKM option, we talked about it in the unboxing, but you can see here this does have signage. It has nice consistency. I like the pattern here. Has stitching going down the side. I think that integrates nicely. This does have a signed clasp, or a signed buckle rather, as well, and it does have the double keepers, and the one actually has to hold it in place, which I think is a nice touch there. On the bronze version, do note that this is IP coated for this, so this isn't going to be real bronze, but look at that difference as far as seeing those next to each other. First, I think this matches pretty well for the strap, but additionally what's pretty cool is while right now you can see this has a little more of a greenish look to it, and it doesn't match perfectly with the rose gold, as this patinas, as that gets some of that green hue that you get to bronze as it ages, I think this will actually blend really nicely. So I think that was a great choice, and I might actually even prefer that they went with IP as opposed to bronze, especially because that helped to keep the cost down a little bit on the watch and keep these low price points, which I think was a good call overall. All right, so there you have it as far as the overview and getting through some of the details. Now let's go ahead and pop up a couple watch comparisons. Here it is, just to show another. This is a 42mm watch. This is a Seiko King Samurai here, and that gives you an idea. I wanted to show this one because that also has a polished bezel insert. You can see kind of the different execution. Obviously a little bit cleaner of an execution on the Revelot as far as less ticks and marks. However, a little more precision on the Seiko. The Seiko's great. It looks awesome on there, so I can't really fault that one. Just 2 different executions for those. But this is bezel. That was one of the things that really appealed to me with the King Samurai, was not only the fact that it was ceramic, but that polish. So I was glad to see that similar. And then just wanted to go ahead and bring in another Revelot. This is one we looked at in the channel in the past, and this just kind of shows the design evolution. This is the R9 Veloce. You can see that right through there. And we do have a review on this one as well if you want to check it out. But there gives you an idea as far as not only the different as far as the sizing for the two, but really, I mean, completely different. This one's going to be a quartz. It has, a chronograph function, skeletonization, just a completely different feel and vibe to these. So it's great to see the brand evolving as they go through their lineup here. All right, so now let's go ahead and wrap this up with some of the positives, some of the critiques, and my overall summary. First, the positives. You absolutely can't argue with the price. And that's one of the things that I haven't mentioned to this point because I wanted to keep it for the end, because that's where it gets incredible. This 3D dial option is going to be launching on Kickstarter at $239. And that's going to be available in either the stainless steel or the bronze with that 3D, and that's any of the color configurations, all the different accents. $239. For the specs, having sapphire crystal, ceramic, all that stuff, fantastic. The Meteorite version, while it's a little bit of a bump in price, is still great priced as well. That's only going to be $329, and again, that's for any of the configurations and options. Excellent pricing there, in my opinion. Overall, the dial pop on these, I think whichever version you go with, I think it has a lot to offer for you, and I think all the configurations and colors that are available just makes it really a little bit of something for everyone. I like the fact that this is not just another homage. This one, while yes, it has clearly the lines and silhouette of a Rolex Submariner, this one went in its own direction. You can clearly see that they took the inspiration, they kept that where you can actually feel some of that through this. And I'm not saying it's to the same level, but it's also not the same price point either, or not even close to that. But I think what they did, I think they did very well, and I think it was well thought out. And I appreciate doing that variation and mixing things up. The sizing for this, I do think is pretty versatile. While I personally would have probably preferred a 40mm, I still think it fits just fine even on my 6.5-inch wrist, and I think it would fit a little smaller wrist as well as plenty larger. So I think overall, that was a good choice. Finally, just as I mentioned there, the consistency of the theme. Not only is it sticking with the Submariner aspect, but the carrying through of the hex, there's a lot of touches all throughout that you can really feel what they were going for with it, and I like the fact that they put a lot of thought into that, while at the same time not having it be overdone. I don't think this is cheesy or gimmicky at all. I actually like it. Some of the critiques. Personally, the finishing. The current finishing of this, and again, do keep in mind that this is just a prototype, the finishing could be cleaned up. It's not bad at all. That being said, I would like to see it stepped up a bit for the production version, even at the price point, which I think will absolutely happen. They've already said that it's going to occur. One of the things we didn't talk about is the hands here. I would like to see them kicked out. They are supposed to be on the at least second hand, but I'm really hoping on the minute hand that they kicked out as well to better touch the chapter ring there. So that's something I'd like to see changed as well. The rehot etching, while it is a nice little touch for this, you can even kind of see on camera, it can be hard to pick up. It does, kind of wash out, especially when the light hits it. I would have liked to have seen either a little bit deeper for that, or otherwise, I don't think it's going to be a huge loss if you do miss out on that feature. On the bracelet, I would like to see the more micro adjustment. 3 holes for me, unfortunately, it was just one too small, one way or the other. So I would have liked to have seen at least a 4th micro adjustment there. For the bezel, the grip on this, I talked about in the unboxing, it is a little bit tough to grip. This, even though it sits proud, and even though I like the texture as far as the edge for that, I do think it could have been a little better traction and a little easier to manipulate that, though it's still plenty workable and really not a big deal there. And then finally, the dial text. This is just a little quibble for me, but the 6 o'clock position having 3 lines of text, I would have liked to have seen that taken down a little more, especially with so much other going on with the dial. 2 lines of text or even 1 line of text, I think would have been still balanced with the overall watch. I think with having 2 lines with the logo in the Revelot, I think 2 lines would have been perfect down at the bottom. So perhaps lose either the automatic or the Hexmariner name on there. Personally, I'd probably lose the automatic, keep the Hexmariner, keep the depth. It's traditional with a dive watch. But again, these are all very minor things. So where does that leave us overall? For this, in summary, I don't think you can go wrong for the price. At $239 for the 3D or $329 for the Meteorite, I think you're getting a heck of a lot for your money. Overall, I've liked these watches, even in prototype form, even with the little imperfections and little quibbles that we talked about here. I don't think they're bad watches at all. And with these being enhanced in the production version, I think they'll just be better. So finally, if you like the overall style of these, if you've been looking and you like a Submariner, but you don't want to buck up for it, or alternatively, you don't want to go for just another generic homage watch, I think these are a great option for you. So I hope this has helped in making your launch decision. If you did enjoy this, please do smash that like button. But most importantly, if you haven't done so already, please do hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel tremendously. And as mentioned, down in the description, I will have links to the Kickstarter campaign if you want to find me on Instagram, as well as Amazon affiliate links. Thanks for watching.